Sorry, Robin.
No worries. This March 4th, 2025 meeting of the Kingston Planning Board. We'll start with introductions. To my left, Rob Trusolo, Planning Board member. Ben Romano, Planning Board member. Peter Coffin, Planning Board member. I'm Robin Duguay, Acting Chair. To my right, Robin Carter, Land Use Administrator. Ellie Alessio is our Selectmen's Rep. Chris Patnod, member of the Planning Board. Glenn Greenwood, Town Planner, and Dennis Quintal, Town Engineer. So we're going to go a little bit out of order tonight to hopefully get through a quick order of business. So this is in regards to, thank you. It's number 2 under board business. There's a letter from Barry Geyer of Jones and Beach, dated 2/2025. Do I need to read this letter, or can Mr. Geyer just present?
I don't want Mr. Geyer to say a word.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I would love to explain what's going on.
Sure.
So Mr. Geyer, on behalf of his client, submitted an application to the ZBA for variance, but the ZBA really is an appeals board and need to see some sort of denial from somewhere. Often either the planning board.
Mike.
Of course. Often either the planning board or the building inspector. So in this case, because what they want to propose is so cut and dried as being prohibited by the zoning ordinance, it seemed to me that the quickest way for him to get a denial in order to make his ZBA application complete was to speak with the board this evening.
Okay.
Now, this is not a noticed public hearing, which is why I don't want Mr. Geyer to say anything or display any of his display board or anything like that. I simply want to tell the board that what they're proposing is a development that would be mixed use, would have a number of commercial uses which are completely allowed in the zone, but also envision doing residential use, which is absolutely prohibited in the zone. So my desire would be to have the planning board simply state that they deny the premise of the application for the use because the zoning ordinance does not allow it. And that will allow me to prepare a letter to send to the ZBA saying that the planning board reviewed this, found that it does not comply with the zoning ordinance, and sent them to the ZBA.
And we can do that without a proposal?
Yes, yes. Okay. Honestly, a lot of towns let the planner do this as a matter of course, just like they let the building inspector make determinations. But we've never really done that here in Kingston. It's been something that has gone through the planning board, so.
Letter denial is a perfect thing, and I would suggest that we make a motion to approve their request to build on it and then shut it down.
I'm just say I'm recusing myself, abstaining from voting on this, even though it's without prejudice. I know that it's a neutral issue here, but I'm just going to abstain.
That makes it so much easier for everybody. The way you have to interact with this.
Feels away from the table.
It's not like he doesn't like Ben.
Okay, so what is the pleasure of the board on this?
So I'm gonna make a positive so that you vote yes if you know the goal. So I move that we approve the proposal for tax map R40 lots 15, 16, and 18 on behalf of RCNH Construction.
So a yay vote.
So a yes vote approves it, a no vote denies it.
Got it?
And then you would be saying a denial, and that's
correct.
what we would send to them.
Yeah, so we need a second.
So, do we need a second before?
You would need a second.
Yeah, a second.
Second by Ben Romano. Oh, motion by.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, so I have a question. Does it make sense to basically spell out the denial or the RSA that we're denying them?
Yeah, when I write the letter, I will indicate the section of the ordinance that prohibits residential development in the commercial zone.
I have it if you want to reference it tonight.
Yeah, why don't we include that in the motion?
So it's Article 109, Commercial Zone C2, Section 109(6)A.
Thank you.
I also second that.
Thanks.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed?
Aye.
All right,
And one abstention.
Thank you, folks.
great.
Thank you for being so quiet.
For our plans and everything. So we will move to the public hearing portion of tonight's agenda. Peter, recuse.
So no abstention.
No
No,
abstention.
recuse.
Yeah, I
Sorry,
recused,
he
yeah, sorry.
recused himself.
I did use that term.
Recuse myself from this seat again.
Well, you kind of get thrown into it.
All right, so next up, this is our second hearing for the Major Sanborn Seminary LLC. And this is a site plan review application to convert the existing seminary building to contain 12 residential apartments and construct 13 detached single-family condominium homes on the property consisting of 12.76 acres. And the existing gymnasium at the northern portion of the site is 2 rooms. And just a reminder, when your mic's on, name and obviously who you're representing.
Good evening. My name is Brian Jones with Allen & Major Associates. We are the civil engineers and landscape architects for the project. The chamber representative is supposed to be here tonight, but he must have got caught up somewhere. But regardless, I'm here to answer questions. I know that since our last meeting, we did have opportunity to meet with Conservation Commission and went over the project with them. And I would say, with respect to working in the buffer, there was some mixed support. Some saw it was not a problem, and others thought maybe it was something that needed further consideration. I'm not aware of an actual letter that was sent to the board from the commission. Was there?
There was one sent fairly recently.
And I did send it to him.
Oh, okay, I must have missed it then. So, I'm not sure what's in that letter, but
It's very brief.
So we do have, obviously, comments from Glenn and Dennis. Apparently, I just refer to both of you as Den now.
But just, yeah.
As well as Superintendent Thomas Ambrose and a letter submitted for public comment. So I don't know if it makes sense, Glenn or Dennis, if either of you want to start with your comments, and then we'll go to Conservation Commission and the other public comments that have been submitted.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
And obviously, the conservation letter will be read to the public as well. I presume. Okay, so my comments from February 21st, I got the 44-page plan set, drainage report binder, and letter and binder calculations of the development impact. I got those on January 2nd. And a number of my previous comments that I believe were addressed have been deleted. Others remain with additions written in italics. I offer the following comments for the planning board to consider. So my previous comment, number 4, was about wetland buffers, Article 202. The information provided in the Gold Soil Report identified specific functions of the wetlands associated with this property. The points added up to 10, requiring a minimum building buffer setback from wetlands of 75 feet. The overall site plan sheet CO102 shows proposed units 1 and 2 with septic systems and proposed pump house. Portions of the parking in the north side of the site were within this buffer. Moving the items outside the buffer is recommended. Their response, my additional comment is that the proposed dwelling unit 1 is still shown within the wetland buffer. The use of the land around these dwelling units will be different than the existing impervious surfaces of the school. Past daily land use was limited. Activity of the school was controlled with little or no activity during the evenings and weekends. Activity around dwellings is much more intense and more apt to impact the wetlands. I still recommend moving or removing Unit 1 to meet the wetland setback requirements to preserve the impact of the wetlands, thereby fulfilling the intent of the zoning ordinance. My comment number 5 reads, portion of the north parking lot is within 5 feet of the lot line, although existing. By creating a landscape area at the entrance, snow plowing would result in piles ending up over the property line. Moving the parking area outside the side setback buffer is recommended. My additional comment was perhaps 6 to 8 spaces could be added northeast of the gym to compensate for moving the spaces near the lot line. The response is to leave parking as is. If so, I would recommend that dilapidated fence be replaced to prevent further impact, future impact to the abutter. So number 6, Article 905-3K. This project meets the requirements of a subdivision. State subdivision approval is also needed, and other state permits must be noted on the recordable site plan. Number 7, easements. This project should show easements and limited common areas for each unit. Limited common areas have been added. However, the meets and bounds descriptions must be added to clarify the location of each to protect the rights of each dwelling. They would need to know where their limits of use are. My comment number 8, Article 905-9, wastewater disposal. In lieu of the showing 4K areas, the proposed wastewater disposal systems on the property should be designed and approved by the town and state. The response says that the applicant will submit each plan for review. Comment number 13 was Article 905-14C-24. Since 4K areas are not shown and test pits are not near most leach areas, I recommend all sanitary waste disposal designs be designed and approved by the town and state prior to planning board approval. The response states that the designs will be a precedent condition for building permits, not site plan approval, since they could affect the building footprint. I believe that these designs must be submitted and approved prior to final planning board approval, since the designs could force changes to the site plan layout. My comment number 16, 905-14C-35, lot labeling. Building numbers must be town approved. The required lot labels must be added to the plans prior to final signing of the Mylar for recording to eliminate future confusion. My comment number 20 was to provide construction sequence within the requirement for a pre-construction meeting to be held prior to beginning the construction. Also, and anticipate phase construction should be provided. Comment number 21, Article 907-3A, performance guarantee. The applicant should submit to the planning board a construction bond estimate and reduction worksheet for review and approval by the town prior to final approval. An example can be provided. Number 24, stormwater design. The proposed design model shows rate of stormwater runoff to the wetlands is less than pre-development as required. For each storm event, calculations also show that the proposed volume of runoff to the wetlands is over double pre-development volume. Perhaps the design engineer could provide information to show that the impact what impact this will be to the pathway and the ball field and downstream abutting properties. Response, my comments, a supplemental drainage analysis was submitted for review. The model evaluates the wetland area upstream and downstream of the ball field pathway as one wetland pond. The increased volume of runoff into the wetland complex results in increased peak elevation of over 5 inches during a 50-year storm event. I agree from the view of the contours this should not affect abutters. However, I do not think it shows the true impact to the pathway. I recommend the wetlands should be modeled as separate ponds since most of the site runoff is into the upper wetlands. I would be interested to see how that impacts the pathway. The pathway culverts may need to be changed. Also, please incorporate these results as outlet control to the site development calculations. Number 26, Article 90816.5 B1G, all newly generated stormwater from new development shall be treated on the development site. Therefore, I recommend revising the design accordingly. Stormwater treatment swale structure is still within the town Main Street right-of-way. The existing grades are below elevation 129. The proposed grade for the swale are elevation 130. Filling in the right-of-way is not acceptable. All stormwater treatment structures must be on the developed site as required. Number 27, Article 90816.5A2, page 33. Stormwater operation and maintenance plan must be recorded in the Registry of Deeds. Additional comments that I had, number 28 would be sheet C103D has text at head wall number 2 that says 18-inch HDPE. I think it needs to be 24-inch as this was the outlet from the drain manhole number 3. The roof drain detail is provided, but it should be shown where the drains are going to connect into the grading and drainage plan. Number 30, HydroCAD calculations show that 286 chambers, all to be set at elevation 27, but the plans show them all different elevations, sloping at 2%, up to over a foot higher. Calculations need to be adjusted accordingly and incorporate wetland outlet control will affect the peak elevation during major storm events. The sidewalk scupper at the northerly entrance is at 130.25. The peak elevation of a 50-year storm is 129.71, only 6 inches lower. Constructing the chambers at a higher elevation reduces storage, forcing peak storm elevation much higher, possibly flooding the northerly entrance roadway. I recommend addressing this issue. And my last comment, number 31, the proposed trees and shrubs should not be planted over or near subsurface utilities. For example, a tree is proposed over utilities east of building number 13 driveway. So that's an easy change. So those are my comments at this time, and I'll be able to review any changes to the plans in the future. Thank you.
One of yours.
Sorry? All right, so I have that this is the second public hearing for this proposal. The board voted to invoke jurisdiction on January 21st. And so the first one, if you'll remember, I had my knickers in a twist about the subdivision concept. Did speak to council directly after that meeting. She reviewed our notice, was very comfortable that our notice confirmed that the project included condominiums. So as far as meeting the state statute for condominium discussion as far as subdivision, completely comfortable. She felt no need for us to renotice or for the applicant to submit any further subdivision application. So that issue was completely taken care of by Carrie Ann. However, for whatever reasons, the condo documents were sent at that same time to her, and life, I think, got in the way. And when I asked her if she could have the review for this coming up Tuesday, after the documents had been sent way back in January, she said that she would endeavor to do that. However, as she looked at them, she reminded herself that when we worked on the covenant associated with this project for 79E, it was discovered that since she had done work for Chinburg, there was a waiver process that had to go through for her to continue to do work. And she submitted that, and that's a document that you could sign, Robin, on behalf of the board, if the board was comfortable with her reviewing these. And the reason that there's a conflict is because she has done work for Mr. Chinburg. However, reviewing condo documents is not an adversarial relationship. It's simply establishing that the documents have those things that the town wants reflected in the condo documents and the information that the applicant wants reflected in the condo documents. And so if we were to sign that waiver that she has submitted, and if representatives from Chinburg's organization would sign that, she'd have no trouble doing the review of the condo docs. So I recommend that as the path forward. Condo documents are a pretty rote enterprise as far as the things that the planning board looks at. It's not something we actively make changes to. We want council to make sure they include what they should include. So I would like some resolution from the board this evening, is if we could get that. Moving on from there. Conflict of interest seems to be the topic of the day. Between last meeting and this meeting, Dana Treslow discovered that she personally had a conflict of interest because the building her office is in is owned by her husband, but now is actually owned by Mr. Chinburg, who bought it sometime in the late or mid-January period, creating the perception of conflict. So she wanted us to be aware of that, and at the planning board's meeting in February, they determined that that did pose a conflict that would appear not to meet the board standard for transparency. And so my second request is the board needs to come up with an alternate hydrogeologic review specialist. And Dana has provided names of folks that do that work, that she had worked with before and felt very comfortable would understand what the town is requiring. But they're, without benefit of the board knowing that this information was there, nothing has been done on that front. I would love to get one of these folks in place to do this review as quickly as we can possibly do that. But that's a planning board decision, not one that I can make for you. So leaving those two comments for conflict of interest, I believe that's the last time I'll use that phrase this evening. Yeah, my third comment did have to do with wetlands. There are, as Dennis pointed out, 2 units that have that are in the wetlands buffer area. I know that the Conservation Commission has discussed this with the applicant. There is a conditional use permit process within the ordinance that they could get approval by the planning board. That conditional use permit process does require input from the Conservation Commission. And I think when you read their letter, they're asking that they be given additional time to review this issue, and possibly a site walk minus snow cover. So that's something that the board also needs to talk about. The applicant has requested a waiver regarding the parking spaces to be provided at the gymnasium. There was a lot of discussion at the first hearing about the parking adequacy at the gymnasium. It seemed to me that there was agreement that there is a set number of spaces that work for the developer for that building and this complex. There was input given, and there's a letter from the school district stating that they're not satisfied with what's being proposed by the applicant. So that's just a piece of information for the board to consider, remembering that this land is owned by the developer. And that,
Glenn, if I may,
Yes.
I don't interpret the letter from the SAU as saying you're not, both the SAU and the applicant are satisfied with the proposed parking. The SAU was not satisfied with removing the 6 spaces that had previously been proposed at the planning board. That was the question to them.
oh, that was what they were concerned with?
Yeah, they just want to keep the 6 spaces that were in
That are
question.
that are along the wall?
Correct.
Okay. That wasn't how I interpreted it, but I appreciate that. So that's an issue that the board needs
Why would
to
the
discuss.
school weigh in? They don't own the park, why would they weigh in on parking spaces?
Okay, that, I'm gonna let that be a discussion that the planning board has. I think I made myself clear last meeting that I felt along the lines of what you just said, but, I'm done with that from my perspective. They address my points 7 through 12. They have agreed that the cisterns, the location and the construction will meet all fire department requirements, and we, as a process, need but a letter from the fire department saying that they're in agreement with that, with the developer, so that's something we would want to see in our files. I'm not gonna go down the road of the parking lot anymore, so I'll skip number 14. Number 15, the town's health officer needs to approve the septic systems proposed for both the apartments and the single-family homes. The applicant understands this requirement and has made a request that approval of the septic systems be a precedent condition for the building permits and not the site plan approval. The reason being that the design of the septic systems will depend upon the specific building footprints used for each unit. It is not a process that the board usually sees in a development of this nature, and as Dennis pointed out in his comments, because of the land areas that we're talking about and the number of units that are proposed, having an understanding that the septic systems, as the units sit on the approved plan, work is important, and if we don't do that, it could result in the need for amendment of the site plan approval at the later date, so that's something that the board should discuss. And that was the last of my comments.
All right, so we did get the letter from the Conservation Commission. So I'll just quickly read these. Brian Jones, project engineer for Allen and Major Associates, appeared before the Conservation Commission on February 9th to present, it's on, yeah. To present Chinburg Properties plan for the Sanborn Seminary building and grounds. In addition to the seminary building apartment conversion, the project includes 13 single-family condominium units. The existing building site includes a wetland with several small buildings and a road existing within the wetland buffer. Mr. Jones stated that the buildings will be removed and road will be removed. The proposed Unit 1 is situated within the 50-foot wetland buffer, roughly in the same footprint as one of the existing buildings. Allen and Associates are requesting a conditional use permit from the planning board to work within the wetland buffer to construct Unit Number 1. Mrs. Nathan reiterated the Conservation Commission's past comment to the planning board that a vernal pool exists on the site, which was known in the past to support obligate species. The Conservation Commission would like to schedule a site walk when the snow is cleared to assess the status of the vernal pool. Mr. Jones suggested that the proposed site plan improves the upland around the wetland by removing 30,000 square feet of impervious pavement and planting native wildflowers. Evie asked if it might be possible to remove invasive bittersweet as part of the upland remediation. Mr. Jones said it was possible. While the Conservation Commission did not wish to oppose the project, and in many ways is an improvement to the current state of the property, we would prefer to have a closer look at the vernal pool and wetland buffer in the vicinity of Unit 1 before agreeing to a conditional use permit. Respectfully, Linda Foss, KCC Secretary, and Evie Nathan, Chair. Like I said, Evie before. One additional public comment submitted. Yeah. Oh, sorry. No, we're not. I'm on a roll here. So, since we're not doing public comment yet, any response from the applicant to Dennis and Glenn's comments or Conservation Commission?
Yes, definitely. We'll try to keep it succinct. I'll start with Glenn first, if that's all right, and then we'll get to the engineering comments. So his first comment was about the conditional use permit, and I will move up to the boards in a minute just to further discuss that. But there was also, we kind of wanted to formalize the Section 202-8B criteria. So I did prepare a letter, and I'll just, is it okay if I pass that out?
Yep.
To the board? So there will be some discussion over this topic, but basically this is the area we're talking about, if you can look at the board. And these are the boards that we presented to the Conservation Commission. So this is the area where we're proposing units 1 and 2. It has pavement, it has education buildings, very close to the wetland, certainly within the 50-foot buffer zone. And what we're proposing is generally a restoration of the wetland buffer, certainly entirely of the 50-foot buffer, but then we do have work between the 50 and the 75-foot buffer, which requires the conditional use permit. So Unit 1 here, Unit 2 is entirely outside of the 75-foot buffer and just barely touches the 100-foot buffer. So the criteria here, number 1, the proposed construction is essential to the productive use of land, not within the Wetland Conservation District. So most of our work that's proposed within the buffer zone is actually removal of pavement and building. That's fairly obvious from the photo. Units 1 and 2 are proposed within the wetland buffer, but they're pulled back. And it's our contention that the development of these 2 units are essential to support the cost of the rehabilitation of the seminary building. The seminary building really was the vision of Mr. Chinberg. He has a great passion for historical structures. He's trying to have a project that works financially, which is why it's languished so long, and finally came up with a concept that seems to balance, and giving up a unit tips the scales, and it no longer balances. Number 2, design and construction and maintenance methods will be such as to minimize detrimental impact upon the wetland and will include restoration of the site as nearly as possible to the original grade and condition. So the current grade and condition of the wetland buffer, it's almost entirely disturbed, currently used as paved area, building, managed lawn. So our proposal is to remove the pavement, the building, and then revegetate with appropriate plantings. And it's the design intent here, these are not lawn grasses, these are wetland buffer plantings that remain in a natural state. It's essentially here, it shows up in the landscape plans too, but it's this darker green hatching, and it's not a maintained area. So the intent is to allow that to revegetate with appropriate species. And then the third criteria really is about wetland disturbance, and that we're not doing that. No alternative route which does not cross a wetland or has less detrimental impact on the wetland is feasible. And we don't have any wetland disturbance. We're not proposing any crossing of wetlands. So that is our argument for the conditional use permit. I know that the commission would like to wait till the spring to render opinion. I mean, it's our request that the board make a decision before all the snow is gone and we're into April, May. That's our request.
If I may hop in real quick, just to double underline the point that Brian made earlier. So unit 1 is the unit that's most impacting the wetland buffer here, and the footprint of this building is located precisely where the technology buildings were previously located for the SAU. So if, in theory, we could have decided to renovate these buildings into a single-family home, and the Conservation Commission would not have had any ability to have a comment, right? So we didn't think that was the right thing for the look and feel of the site, so historically, et cetera. So we were replacing that structure with a custom-built home that is more accurate to the neighborhood and the site. But it is entirely within that footprint, and actually this building is further into the buffer than our proposed structure. So I just want to point that out, like this is not additive in any way. We are simply replacing an existing structure with a new structure, and everywhere else we are removing impervious areas and improving the condition.
And just to echo some more things from the Conservation's letter, we're certainly open to the invasive species mitigation. That's something that Chinburg has done in the past and is possible to do. So if that were a condition of the conditional use permit, then we're certainly open to that. I know that the planner has some other comments, and I can quickly run through those, and then we'll address the engineering, or if the board would like to sit on the conditional use permit and discuss it, it's at your pleasure.
Yeah, if you want to go through the remaining items, I guess, that Glenn had identified, and then if we could tackle the waiver and hydrogeological recommendations, I think that takes care of Glenn's body of work, and then we can move on to engineering.
So I'm only going to read the ones that sort of had action, and the only one was number 13 for the fire department. And we will work with the fire department to get a letter regarding the placement of the cistern. It is shown on the drawings. It's actually shown right here on Norway Lane. We think that's an appropriate spot for it, but we're open to move it someplace else. Right here, sir. It's very visible as fire would enter the site. Engineering comments, I will run through those as well. Starting with number 4, this again has to do with the conditional use permit and dwelling unit number 1 with the work within the wetlands. So I will leave that to the discussion of the board instead of trying to address it again. Number 5 had to do with the 6 to 8 spaces at the northeast of the gym. And again, there was some previous discussion on that regarding the school district, and their request is to maintain all of the parking and certainly not reduce it. Chinburg is willing to replace the fence, so if that's required or a condition, then certainly we're willing to do that in that location.
Can I just ask, for my own curiosity, because I know it came up at the last meeting, in the purchase and sale agreement, what was the stipulation around utilization of the Swayze Gymnasium and, I guess by proxy, the parking?
So we have a lease with the SAU from, they are leasing the Swayze Gym, and the terms are pretty broad, but not specific, and that it's for their continued use. for their programming. So as long as we're not altering the site that somehow makes it so they can't continue their programming, then we are in compliance with that lease.
And there was nothing in there about parking?
Nothing specific about parking.
Okay.
So we reached out to them, they provided this letter, and so the letter says, for their programming, they're sufficiently parked, and they want those 6 extra spaces. And an overflow, again, for their programming, could occasionally be accommodated at the Bakey School. They did note in the letter that for their sort of subtenant, who is not a tenant of the town, for election day, there is not sufficient parking. There will not be sufficient parking, which was obvious.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's sort of where the SEU's position was.
Okay, thank you.
If parking for the town is an issue, believe me, it's not an issue because we don't even want to be there anymore. We want to use the new high school instead, which is 20 years old. So we're forced to use it in Tuesday's election because they might have basketball games that day. I don't want to go down that road because it's not a pleasant position. But if I remember, I've been involved in this project a number of years, and Mr. Chimman would have been happily to lift that gym and move it somewhere else if someone wanted it. So I don't see 6 parking spots.
That's not the hill we're gonna die on.
That's not, absolutely not.
So number 6 had to do with state subdivision approval, and obviously if that's required, then we'll provide that. State permits must be noted on the recordable site plan. That's not a problem. Number 7, limited common lines have been added. However, meets and bounds descriptions must be added to clarify the location of each to protect the rights of each dwelling. We are willing to show meets and bounds. We'll require some additional drawings, but that's certainly something that we can do. Number 8, wastewater disposal. In lieu of showing 4K areas, each proposed wastewater disposal system on the property should be designed and approved by the town and state. And the response says the applicant will submit each plan for review. So I don't think we need a response there. We are going to do that. 13, again, has to do with the septic areas. And it's that the designs be completed prior to final approval. And again, we're requesting that the final septic systems are designed as a precedent condition for building permit. And I understand that there might be concern that we would change the site plan to accommodate septic systems, but if that's the case, we would need to come back to the planning board. So I don't think there's exposure there for you, but again, we'll leave that to the board to make a decision. 16, lot labels. We will add lot labels to the plans. We've been using unit numbers, and actually condominium nomenclature is not lot. The condo plans would have to be labeled as units, but we can certainly add those numbers to the drawings. Number 20, provide a construction sequence with a required pre-construction meeting prior to the beginning of construction and a phased construction plan. Definitely. If that's a condition, we're certainly going to provide those pieces of information. They do sort of fall after an approval when site contractors and general contractors have worked out some specifics. So it's not something that can be done right now, but we would certainly be willing to provide that information. And then similarly with the performance guarantee, we'll provide the bond estimate and reduction worksheet. That can be done prior to final approval. And 24 has to do with stormwater modeling. We will revise the stormwater model and update the drainage analysis per that comment. 26 has to do with the swale. It was our intention to keep that entirely within the site. If that needs to be adjusted a little further, then we'll do that. We'll keep the improvements out of the right-of-way. Number 27, a stormwater operation and maintenance plan needs to be recorded. The applicant's willing to do that. 28 is a Scribner's error there. We will relabel that pipe. 29, a roof drain detail is shown. we're going to remove that detail. We don't have any roof drains. The single-family dwellings will have downspouts and gutters and splash pads. They're not connected to a drainage system. Number 30 has to do with the stormwater model again, and we will revise it to address that comment. And then the 31 has to do with the tree over the utilities, and I will move the tree. And that's not where we want it. And I hope that wasn't too fast, but that was everything.
Thank you. If we can move to the conflict of interest waiver, I think that at least feels like some low-hanging fruit right now. So what I would like to do is not read this entire waiver, but just summarize. There's a stated conflict of interest. However, dual representation is allowed where the lawyer reasonably believes that the lawyer will be able to provide competent and diligent representation to each affected client. The representation is not prohibited by law. The representation does not involve the assertion of a claim by one client against another client represented by the lawyer in the same litigation or other proceeding before a tribunal. And each affected client gives informed consent confirmed in writing. It sounds like this would be the request obviously sought by our counsel, and then Drummond Woodsum is also seeking a similar conflict waiver from Mr. Chinberg. So,
I move that we authorize the acting chair to sign the waiver of conflict of interest for Drummond Woodson.
Motion by Ellie, second by Peter Coffin. Any further discussion?
Yeah, this is just for the condo units, right?
Just for the
Yes.
Review of the condos, yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
Is Drummond reaching out to Chimberg directly on that? I've not seen.
That's what it sounded
Carrie
like.
Ann, it sounded like that, she intended to do that.
Okay. Okay, what's her name, Carrie Ann?
Carrie Ann Roman,
Carrie Ann, sorry about
Carrie Ann Roman. When I'm in on Thursday, I'll give her your information, okay? Because I just got this morning.
Oh, but it's confidential. Okay. You know, I'm not sure. So the second is the hydrogeologists that have been recommended. There are two. Tom Ford Environmental, Chad Tomford, he took over many of the Stone Hill projects and performed the GW monitoring at the All-American site. And Edgewater Strategies, it looks like Abby Fopiano. Abby worked with Geosphere and Exeter, and
She's
now-
our hydrogeologist.
Oh, yeah, okay, so, she's
That takes care of it.
If she's approved to review herself, then we would be amenable to that.
All right. So that leaves us with Tom Ford Environmental. If anybody would like to make a motion that we,
Yeah, I'll make the motion that we employ Chad Tomford of Tomford Environmental to perform a review of the hydrogeological survey done by the applicant.
Second.
any further discussion?
Yes. The applicant has supplied money already for this. My only concern is they're going to quote us a price. And I hope that there isn't a great difference between what Dana was charging to do this work and what they would charge to do this work. But I don't know, so I have to hear from them.
Let's see how much he wants to do the work.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let him know that we have an established escrow account to achieve this work. So I just want everyone to understand that this is someone we haven't dealt with before, so.
So I'm just wondering if instead of making a motion to employ his services, do we want to make a motion to have Glenn reach out and see if he'd be willing to?
Yes, to request his services, to request a contract, whatever.
I'll amend my,
Okay.
revised motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. All right. So next up is, as far as my notes go, the matter of the conditional use permit for the construction within the wetland buffer. And we've heard,
From Dennis and from the CC on this. I think that some of the information on the review, the hydrogeologic survey may be useful, and the analysis that is going to come in for the, Glenn, what was the terms you used for the functional values of the wetlands? Did we get that provided already to determine the setbacks?
I believe that report has been provided, has been prepared. I still have not seen it.
Okay,
I know
so,
it's been-
so this is all information
He provided
that, since we don't have the information required to do the cup, that we delay that until we've received the information on the wetlands, and I know Dennis's report suggested moving it outside if it can be, but I think we need to know what the impact of having those in the buffers is going to be, and I think that would be part of the review of the hydrogeologic survey.
Well,
Or the wetland scientist.
I can't even wager a guess as to when we're gonna be able to get the hydrogeologist's response. I hope that it's quick. The discussion about the functional,
Values.
valuations, that is something that can be achieved before the next planning board hearing.
Right, yes.
We have that, so that
Okay,
isn't
okay,
something that should be a concern. The concern is satisfaction by the Conservation Commission, because they're called out in our ordinances.
As it shall be
that
consulted.
They shall provide
Yes.
input. So we have to hear from them. Again, the discussion about a site walk, that's,
And that brings up another question, is the vernal pool, which is separate, kind of a separate issue, but are you able to show us where the vernal pool is on that?
I am not. It may be on or off the site. I'm not sure where it is.
Yeah, I do. I've been in that area back when I worked down there, so I don't remember falling into a vernal pool in that time, but I didn't go that far back.
My understanding was that the vernal pool was kind of in the presumed vernal pool was in this area.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I had seen on some sort of prior markup.
Yeah,
So it's in the wetland.
Yeah.
So it would not be impacted by building number one.
I mean,
Well-
It's not, building number one doesn't sit on top of it, I guess
I
that's
mean,
it.
in order for us to get that delineation, we had a wetland scientist go up there and survey the site, right? So this is informed from data already. So yeah, I don't really know where this is coming from. As previously mentioned, we really don't want to wait until April or May to have the snow melt to be able to assess this. When I think common sense is that we are improving condition. We are removing impervious areas, we are revegetating the buffer, and we are simply replacing a structure that used to house maintenance equipment, one of the sheds there, with a single family home, which will have, less impact. So, I would ask, and I also think for the ordinance, like the Conservation Commission has provided input, and the input is indecision, but that is input. Unfortunately, I was not able to be at that meeting, but I would have pressed them to make a motion, because from my understanding, we probably would have carried a yes vote, except we didn't press for a motion. So that's my take. I would ask that we try to get this CMP before snow melt, before all these things, apply common sense here. This is not, why are we jumping through all these hoops for the common sense of what we have presented, I guess is what I'm saying.
The reason I was asking for that location is because it's my reading of that letter that this vernal pool had been identified. If it had, presumably, and the location was known, and we would have had some kind of analysis of the size of it and how far it needed to be protected. And where the Conservation Commission is coming from that is we had another vernal pool that we set a buffer around so it would protect it from, getting mowed right down to the edge of the water and destroying the vernal pool. And that unfortunately got invaded on, and we lost that. So I think they're a little sensitive about that, and if they or someone can provide information about the pool and what kind of vegetation's around it and things like that, so that we're not just clearing the trees, especially on the south side of the pool.
It is within the wetland. It's
Right.
within the wetland, so, we're not proposing any work within 50 feet of the wetland.
Okay, yeah, it's,
Well, the rub here, and sorry, I'm not a wetland scientist, and I don't even portray one on a television show, but my understanding is that this one is located within a wetland complex. The problem being, for us, a vernal pool immediately causes a 100-foot setback from the edge of its existence.
Yeah.
So the only information I would find helpful would be the actual delineation of the vernal pool placement in the wetland to see if the application of the 100-foot setback creates more impact to maybe beyond Unit 2. I don't believe that's the case. I believe that if that was the case, Mr. Gove would have said so, because he's a really qualified wetland scientist. He's been doing it a really long time.
right.
But that isn't crystal clear to me.
As perhaps we could get more information from him further, if it's not in the report.
Perhaps just a statement from Mr. Gove saying that the way he determined the wetland setbacks incorporated the location of the vernal pool within the wetland complex and established the 100-foot barrier, it being further away from the extent of the wetland buffer from the edge of wetland.
Of the wetland edge, yes. So it's probably, if it's, as long as it's 50 feet farther from that, and there's a 50-foot buffer, that would be equal to 100 feet. Yeah, I think that if we can get information, if this was last year, we could have gone out there right now and been able to see it, but this year we've got snow on the ground.
So I'm happy to circle back with our consultant to get a statement to that.
Yeah,
I was trying to recall, I had never heard of vernal pools on the site at all until this went to Conservation Commission. So that was news to me. So it's like, I don't even know if there is one technically, right? So, and I hate to sound like that guy, but it's just like, I rely on my consultants because I also don't play an environmental consultant on TV. And so if our consultant didn't cite that, which seems like a pretty big oversight, then I'm relying on them to have that information correct.
Unless his feeling was that vernal pool complex exists so interior to the greater wetland complex that buffering it didn't become an issue.
Sure. And I guess I would also add, and I get that there is a higher standard for vernal pools, but that zooming out again from a common sense perspective, we are improving the condition. So it's like this vernal pool will be better, if it exists, will be better protected with the built condition that we are proposing than the condition that currently exists, that existed historically, the last many decades. So, it is one of those things where it's like I don't want to get lost in the trees here when the conditional use permit seems likely, if I'm honest, right? Like we're probably gonna get it in some form or another, but I don't want this to take 6 months and to lose 2 houses, and this project is now even more behind the financial curve than it already has been. As you all know, this is literally year 4. Chimber bought this property a month or two before I started. I've been working on this project for 4 years. And
Lucky son.
oh, yeah. So
You should
this is
sit
the
on this
longest.
side.
This is the longest lived entitlement process I've ever done. I have built, 200-unit buildings in the city of Boston. This has taken longer. And it's largely the market conditions. Like it's not necessarily the fault of the town, but
We've literally only seen the proposals since.
yeah. I mean, the planning board, right? But I've seen our friends at the HCC, I think 8 times. So anyways, just to say, like, this has been a very long process. We think we have a plan that finally works. And then I guess I'm begging you to not make it longer.
Can I ask a logistical question? Is there a procedural question? Is the possibility for a conditional use permit that we can vote on the conditions for the waiver or the permit and have a condition that the statement that the vernal pool will not be impacted or it's, doesn't exceed the 100-foot buffer?
I would prefer not to do that.
Okay.
Well, we have a meeting in 2 weeks. There's no reason why we can't act on it at that time. It's still in March, still gives you, we'll have snow. It's not gonna change anything, even with a little meltdown the next couple of days. But I think we could move quickly. I'd hate to see us deep six this project, to be very honest with you. If we can get confirmation that the vernal pool will be okay or buffered accordingly, then we need to move forward.
Okay, so we'll work on getting that statement from Gove before the next meeting.
I have his report right here. He says there are 2 vernal pools observed within the wetland area. The wetland area is 2 acres in size, but he doesn't give any location on it. But I'm sure that his records probably will give you some information about it. The 2 wetland vernal pools has both wildlife habitat and vernal pool activity present. So he's basically saying that those are factors, wetland functions that need to be taken care of, but if it's far enough away, it may not be an issue. So, but he did submit a report.
Good. I think that getting that information would, as Glenn says, would just make it a lot easier to have the information, not make the conditional use permit conditional upon getting the information. That's cart and horse thing, yeah.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if the vernal pools are there, they exist, you're still talking about improving the site and making it better than what it is, so I just wanted to make that point again, that it seems like it'll be better for the area than it was previous, so.
I mean, I'm gonna have to weigh in on that myself. The ugly building is gone. There's less building space, there's less tar, there's better drainage, there's water, there's treatment of the runoff. I mean,
Well,
I guess if we gotta wait 2 weeks, we gotta wait 2 weeks, but I'd be willing to move forward on it now. I mean,
so hypothetically, if the response from Gove comes back that there's a vernal pool 2 feet away from the 50-foot buffer, what do we do with that? Does that change the appetite to approve the conditional use permit,
mean,
or does that?
Additional information.
Yes.
Okay.
they're just looking to do the work within the buffer. It's not like they're putting the house there.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I see this 2 different,
There's 2 things. One is to do the work, which I think we all agree.
Right.
Removing the asphalt is good, and that's not really a question. The question's on unit 1 and maybe unit 2, whether they're still too close and might have an impact, and I think that's why we need the extra information.
I mean, do we have an idea where this drain comes off, coming across Church?
Oh, yeah, we didn't deal with that issue.
Well, I mean, if you're talking vernal pool, that's,
Correct.
What's that?
We haven't even gotten to public comment yet.
Oh, that's public comment.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry, oops. Yeah. I mean, it comes into play with what we're talking about here is,
We're all over that as a
So let's just do public comment now. since
Okay.
we're here. So before we open to the floor for public comment, we received notice from Donna M. Carter, not notice, I'm sorry, comment from Donna M. Carter regarding drainage. I have a question about the drainage for the seminary project. The plans but don't say anything about off-site impact. In the 60s, the Christies, 18 Church Street, map R30, lot 1 property, gave the town a drainage easement for the east side of Church Street. The water goes under Church Street and drains into Greenwood Pond. Will there be zero tolerance for any additional water to come off the seminary site and into Greenwood Pond?
All right.
I guess engineering,
Well, the applicant's plans don't show the culvert on Church Street. I'm not sure if the culvert on Church Street is just picking up the drainage along Church Street and running it underneath Church Street toward Greenwood Pond, or if that culvert is an outlet structure for the wetlands. So it's really not clear, but that's something that the applicants should probably take a look at and provide information to the town. Because it's just as, you've got two different things and you don't know if they're connected or not.
and did the applicant get the plans that were showing where that culvert is and the size and stuff?
We did. Yes, I mean, the basis of the whole drainage analysis is to not exceed existing conditions. So if we need to expand the area of analysis to include the culvert crossing Church Street, we can do that.
I will open public comment at 7:57, should there be any.
You weren't just observing?
Oh.
Got the microphone over there.
Oh.
Nice.
Is that why there's a giant sign? I didn't see until just now.
It is a pretty big sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably have to turn it on.
Thank you very much. Madeline Willett, 189 Main Street, on behalf of the Kingston Historic District. I had made comments, I should stand over here. Previous to this, I haven't seen the new plans, but I just wanted to reiterate. We're very concerned about the drainage swale on Main Street. So I'm not sure where that's landed, but just the viewscape, you don't want to see a big moat coming off Main Street to the front of the new houses that are going to be lining there. Also, it could be a safety issue for children because it's the school is right across the way. And I think Dennis had mentioned that it was going to be deep enough so that it would need fencing, so that's a kind of unsightly. So that's a big concern for us. If there was any way you could bury it, a pipe with maybe grading for the water to go into so it was just all level, just a suggestion. Secondly, I think house number 12 has been scooched over because it was hanging over the another swale within the property. So I hope that's been addressed, and just dark sky compliant lighting and maybe getting rid of some posts. And that was it.
Thank you. Response? Oh,
Would you like me to respond?
They did, so I think he's gonna probably read those, or?
Oh, good.
I actually didn't bring those. Those are the ones we filed, several weeks ago. But we took the comments to heart, obviously, and made those changes. The swale is no more. It's very much in keeping with what you see here, where it's flat in the road. I mean, there is a very subtle swale like there is today. If you go out there, it might be about 6 inches deep. And then Unit 12, we also did modify that, mostly because of the large fir tree that we're trying to maintain in this area. So Unit 12 did get rotated and moved away from the tree. But that depressed area that you spoke of is no longer there. So we just reworked the drainage in the front there so it just is more residential.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will close public comment at 8 p.m. So that leaves us with still the outstanding issue of the CUP and that sort of hinges on feedback about the location of the vernal pool and then the culvert. Oh, thank you. Did you say parking? Yeah, so I also wanted to read the letter from Superintendent Ambrose dated February 14th, 2025. Dear Paul, I'm writing in response to your request that the Sanborn Regional School District consider the changes that would remove 6 existing parking spaces along the property line in the northeast parking lot of the Swayze Gymnasium with the aim of creating a landscaping buffer. We understand that this will reduce the number of parking spaces from 39 to 33, 4 of which will be ADA. Unfortunately, we need those 6 spaces for events such as voting, basketball games, and other community-based events. Going below 39 spaces will limit the ability of the district to utilize the facility. We also understand that the Bakey Elementary School parking lot across the street may be needed at times for overflow parking. Please know that we agree with this, but only when school is not in session, as the parking lot will be needed for school staff. If you have additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Sincerely, Thomas Ambrose, Superintendent. So I feel like that was clarified earlier, that the offer of offense seems to be sufficient for everybody. So then we're still left with the vernal pool issue in the CUP and the drainage culvert and where that sort of lands, correct?
The drainage, oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
And getting the hydrogeologic.
Yes.
Regarding, excuse me, regarding the parking, I just would like to ask the applicants if he even considered taking a look at additional parking, because there is an area in the northeast part of the gym where you could add parking spaces and be outside of the buffer. So I just think that
where the septic system for the gym is.
you can still, it's not clear, what's identified as the septic system would be outside of where parking spaces would be. So I just want to bring that up as there's a possibility of adding spaces, so you wouldn't lose spaces one way or another, or also, if there's a concern about parking, there's extra parking spaces there that you could probably try to do. So I just want to bring that up. Maybe you could just take a look at that, that's all.
We did look at that,
Yeah.
and there's underground infrastructure in both locations that you identified. One is the tank, and one is the septic system. So
Well, it's not clear on the plan, so just take a look at it. Maybe that'll help out on some of
we
the,
can
answer some of
identify
these
those
questions.
in the plans for you.
Thank you.
I still think the superintendent doesn't have to weigh in on parking spaces.
So what is the pleasure of the board with what we have before us currently?
I think the CUP issue can wait for, as you said, 2 weeks, at which point I'm hoping that any ambiguity about the vernal pool would be resolved. I think that, as Glenn said, this guy's an experienced wetland scientist, and there's probably a reason why he didn't start drawing more concentric circles. But I think we need to get that confirmed and provide that information to the Conservation Commission, and perhaps get them to either provide some more input and say maybe with some decisions or something. I don't know when they meet next, but at the very least, I think we can get the information by, as you said, 2 weeks from now, the next meeting.
When they meet is their business, but I
Yeah.
think we need to make a decision at the next meeting. I feel very strongly.
If we get the information from, they're scientists, and
I'm not on, I mean, where, I'm uncomfortable with a lot of that, only because it's such an improvement. I mean, you had these buildings that were there, and you had this runoff that was there, and a vernal pool, I mean, that, is it gonna melt? Are we gonna be able to get there? Are we gonna have another snowstorm? And again, if you were taking a field and putting a house there, I guess I would be, I mean, there's a lot of ifs coming into that moving forward with the plan that's been on the board for 4 years. What, if we don't get a report back in 2 weeks, what do we do then? And are we looking for a vernal pool to be 100 feet back, or are we for, I mean,
I know
there's
we
a
can assess that.
wetland study, and he's in the 50 foot.
I'm expecting it would probably be a moot point, but, you know, if it's not, then there certainly should be some analysis of what's gonna be.
Hasn't there been
protecting
work
it.
done on this site for wetlands?
Yes, there absolutely,
Yeah,
there
so-
absolutely has. Jim Gove did a complete wetlands evaluation of the site.
If I may, my intention for the next meeting is to connect with Jim Gove and to get a memo for him to clarify the status of the vernal pools and how they would be impacted by the proposed development, if at all, and to provide that ahead of the next meeting for your review. So it will be the existing wetland scientist who has already identified these vernal pools per the report that's been submitted, but to provide specific guidance as to where they are and what impacts might exist to them.
That'd be good.
And from the perspective of the ordinance, we have met our requirement to ask the Conservation Commission their opinion.
Input, yeah.
They expressed to us that their concern is the vernal pool, are the
Right.
vernal pools. So that, hearing from Mr. Gove about the vernal pools in the way that was just described by Paul, I believe gives you the information that our ordinance requires
That we
you to have regarding what the input from the Conservation Commission was. At no time does it say the Conservation Commission, in our ordinance, does it say the Conservation Commission has to approve
Right,
the
yeah.
CUP. The CUP is our mechanism, not theirs. Our requirement is to provide the Conservation Commission the ability to comment, which they have done. And we are asking for additional information because of that comment. I think
that's.
we will have appropriate information at our next meeting
Yeah.
for this particular issue.
Yeah, and I think this sidewalk issue has been resolved because it's been walked by Mr. Gove. So I'm just gonna move that we postpone the CUP discussion until, what's the date, March?
What is that?
21st? What's the day?
20th, is it?
I'm hearing lots of different dates.
Yeah, I don't have my calendar in front of me.
It's the 18th.
18th,
18th, yeah.
okay, and, and then we address it then, and the applicant has already stated his intention of getting the report, so. I do have, we started the shot clock, 60-day shot clock on the 21st.
Start the 65 days.
65 days, so 18th is still good, we don't have to request them, you know, that, if we have to go beyond the 18th, we'll deal with that when if and when we have to continue. But there's an awful lot of other stuff that, you know, the comments and replies and things that are on Dennis's and your, we will address. So, we can either make a general motion to continue it to then, or
I will
there's
do
more
my
stuff.
best to determine whether we can get the hydrogeologist working on that quick a time frame. I don't know. I don't know. They're only reviewing. They're not creating. The study has been created, so it
Reviewing.
depends upon their ability to spend time doing the review, you know, in such a shortened timeframe.
Yeah.
Dennis, did you have a comment?
Yes, I do. So, a number of my comments are about drainage, and the applicants are going to try to address those comments. One of the things that you might want to continue to discuss tonight would be whether the septic systems should be designed or not right away. And that would get them to a situation where they would not need to do them right away, or if they should be done right away, they could start working on them fairly soon. So I just wanted to bring that up before you continue to the next meeting.
And what I understood from Glenn's comment about this earlier was that it would be sort of unusual for us to entertain a plan set that did not include septic design. Is that accurate?
Not entirely. Turn on your microphone. We never see, even on our largest subdivisions, we never see septic design plans before approval, but we always have on each plan a 4,000 square foot area where septic systems can go. Those areas aren't determined for this project. That's the difference.
Got it.
And they're based on
Just
test
that
pits,
It
you
could be
mean?
here. It may not be here, but it could be.
Correct,
Okay.
and Dennis's question is they're saying they could be there, how firm is that? Because if they can't be there and they require changing, the applicant has stated they understand that could mean that they need to come back for an amended site plan. If the location of septic systems that drastically impacted their development plan.
What is the most sort of straightforward mechanism to move this forward? To have something shown on the plan?
That's the
Or
most straightforward.
to have the applicant certain that whatever they've designed is going to meet the requirement and will not need to be amended?
That's the most straightforward way of doing it.
What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure what you were saying is the most straightforward, because we are showing tanks in a field areas sized based on test pits on the property, although, you know, they're not 100% designed, but the septic systems are shown on the site plan for each unit.
And from the owner's
And I
perspective,
appreciate that you're looking at me, but I want you to I am not a septic designer, and actually, Dennis is.
so I would add that
So God bless you, Dennis.
we do have some, schematic design of the septic systems shown on the plan. What we have asked previously was if final design is required to make it a condition of the building permit, not the approval, because getting all of that design ahead of time is going to add time and cost that we would like to avoid. And if we make them a condition of the building permit, then you're still getting the information you need. It's just closer to when we will actually have the information in our design process.
So, but what I'm hearing is we don't need the final design to consider the plan set for approval. It's just hypothetically, this is where we could put it.
They're on there.
Okay.
That is what we've provided. And, obviously first floor elevations, basement floor elevations, to check that inverts would work with the appropriate groundwater setback. They are semi-vetted enough that we're comfortable that it could be built. We don't want to propose something that can't be built.
Yeah, I would also add that if, just to pull this thread a little bit, in the situation that one of these septic systems had to be, air quotes, significantly redesigned over what is schematically shown in the plan, I don't know, maybe this would be an amendment that requires us to come back to the site, to the planning board, but, to me, that seems like an administrative approval change, right? When we submit that to the city, say, hey, this didn't work out the way we anticipated it to, it's a minor de minimis change to the site plan, nothing else is changing, We submit it to the planner distributes it to the required folks in the town, provide comment, it gets administratively approved. To me, that doesn't seem like it merits even coming back to the planning board. If it does, we're willing to take that risk. And we can gather here on a lovely Tuesday evening and talk about my septic system change.
Dennis?
Certainly, I can comment a little bit. So, one of the things I think about this is that I'm not objecting to what you're showing on the plans. It's just the process is that something could happen to change the layout of the project. Septic system designs are something that are needed before you can get a building permit. Before you get a building permit, you obviously have to get through the planning board process. You get through the planning board process and you could get a conditional approval pending final septic designs that don't change the layout. And so that way there, you're covered as far as the planning board not giving you final approval, but it'd be a condition of approval to get the septic designs done prior to final planning board approval. So I don't know why that would hold you up from getting your first building permit at all. I don't believe it would. The weather's getting better now. It's easy enough to do septic designs. They're all pretty much cookie cutter designs. You've probably got them already done. Test pits in the area, it's certainly something that can be done fairly easily within a short period of time, within the next month or so. So I'm looking at it time frame wise, this isn't going to hold you up at all, and it's going to eliminate this concern that there may be, maybe I have more than anybody else, but it is a concern that we don't want to see the site change, and I'm sure you guys don't either. You've probably got them pretty much done. So I don't see it as a big deal if I was an applicant, to be able to say, yeah, we can get those septic designs done within the next 3 to 4 weeks or a month, and then we don't have to debate it. So I guess that's where I'm coming from. So.
Yeah, I think the key word is final approval in your recommendation as opposed to approval at all. It's not holding up the approval. You could do a conditional approval. Final approval we know always happens later.
Yeah, correct, because there's drainage issues that have to be addressed, and so hopefully those be done fairly. I don't know if they can be done by the next meeting, because you're only talking about a couple of weeks, and plans have to be submitted ahead of time, so you only have a few days here, I guess, but so we may be into April anyways. So that's just my thoughts on it, but you can.
I just want to make sure, Dennis, I'm not misunderstanding. So, but the conditional approval could be that the septic designs are reviewed and approved by you.
No, by the town and the state.
Which they have to be anyway. Because we have a septic system inspector.
The town does.
And then this whole conversation, though, really only becomes a concern if there are substantive changes between what's proposed and what.
And that's why, like Glenn said, there's no 4K area where there's not going to be an issue. And I understand where they're coming from. They've got a pretty good idea where things are going to go, and I'm not debating that at all. It's just that there is an issue and there is a concern that I wouldn't want to see a change, and there's not going to be a time. I don't believe there'll be a time lag either of getting this work done before you would be signing a final plan.
So if I may add a layer to this conversation, one of the things that we have been discussing at length with the HDC, and I have talked about less here just because it's less relevant to this board, is that the single-family homes will be built in a phased manner. So we will advance a number of them, probably 3 or 4 of them, on a speculative basis that we'll go into pull building permits for those 4. Those are the ones that we already have approved HDC designs for. And then we'll use those to start the sales process. But the rest of the homes will be sold, the lots will be sold, and then we'll work with the owners of those lots to essentially customize their home. So I don't know what those houses even look like yet. We know that they have to fit in a lot. We know that they have, the septic system has to fit in the site. I don't know if there's a deck. I don't know if there's a sunroom. I don't know. So it's difficult, and this is why I'm asking for it to be a condition of the building permit for each of the various lots, because we don't know what they're like. We are physically capable of providing you a plan that meets you to check the box to get the approval. It will cost me money that I might have to then re-spend when a redesign happens, and I think that's avoidable. And I guess that's all I'm asking, is I would prefer not to pre-design things to check a box if we can make that a condition for when that box needs to be checked anyways, and at that time have certainty that that the condition is acceptable. And again, I don't know, I don't do a lot of, this is my first subdivision with septic, so I don't know, but again, it doesn't, moving septic fields around slightly seems like a de minimis change to me. So I defer to the board, but that is our request.
Would anyone from the board like to render an opinion about that?
I'm a little concerned as to why you think there would be a different septic design required for somebody who designs, they want, what, more bedrooms or something? I would think that there's a given footprint for these houses, size of these houses.
Bedroom count's fixed. They can't add more bedrooms.
Right,
There's a maximum of 3 bedrooms per home. They could.
So why would you have to
technically
redesign
less
the septic
bedrooms, but
system?
they couldn't have more. So if anything, the septic systems would get smaller. There's no way they can go up. We cannot build more than 3-bedroom homes on this site.
So that whole discussion is moot at this point.
Well, it's whether you can design the septic systems for 3-bedroom houses, and then
I think it's I mean, we know the flow for each of these homes, right? I think what is yet to be determined is the exact location on the unit, on the lot, because we don't know the final home design, right?
Where the pipes come
and
out.
then the invert and outvert based on the elevation of that home and its basement. So we have very informed information on here based on what we anticipate, but without having final home designs, we can't say for certainty that that is where those will be. Given how small, frankly, these lots are, there's not a lot of places for these septic systems to go. So again, I can't imagine it changes for the septic systems over what is conceptually shown here to be substantive.
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna pause on that because I understood that Peter had made a motion about the CUP, but I just want to clarify that because was that a motion or a?
well, I was going to propose that we do that, but the question becomes, if we're going to meet in 2 weeks to just discuss the CUP, or if we're going to try to discuss other things, and if the plans aren't going to be ready for the drainage changes and things like that, does it really make sense to do that? And I guess take the advice of the planner and you guys to determine whether, and the applicant to determine whether they want to come back in 2 weeks, and then.
It seems to me, and I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
cutting you off.
No, you're.
It seems to me that there are a couple of things that we can get accomplished at that next meeting. I would love to put the conditional use permit to bed if we can, and that could happen in a short hearing if that was the
Exactly,
only
that-
thing that occurred.
That would be good.
But I'd love to be able to tell you that the hydrogeologic study was able to be reviewed as well. But I don't know about that.
So at least we can move it to 2 weeks from now and then deal with
If there
anything,
are outstanding
anything that we
issues.
can deal with, we can discuss.
Exactly.
I guess I'm feeling like it would be helpful to the applicant to be able to have some resolution around the septic design question and where we stand on that prior to 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, we probably ought to decide, this is a new one on me, that I understood that there were individual septic systems for each house, but I thought the houses were pretty much a lock-in, 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, whatever, and that the location was as shown on the plan, and that we wouldn't be having that. I mean, you talked about scooting number 12 around and turning it, you know, so if you've already decided on aspect and location, I wouldn't think that there would be a problem getting a final design on the septic systems for these units.
I just, with the discussions with the HGC, they want to do these houses out front, and that's what they want to build. I think the problem with what the applicant's having is they're not sure they're going to build that on that lot. So if they have a different design, and putting a septic design in for someone wants a 2-bedroom cape instead of a 3-bedroom colonial, I think that septic design is going to change, and that's what they're looking for, to have that approved, which we'll be doing in the building permit process anyway.
Toss that to the professionals.
So just to answer that, I don't know how many designs I've done where the foundation happens to change when you actually build it. Septic designs get done, they get built and installed, and at that point in time, if the foundation is a little bit different than what the septic design is approved, you do an as-built, and that happens all the time. And maybe the septic tank might move one place or another because of where the pipe comes out of the house. So there are some modifications, but they aren't expensive to do. It's an as-built plan that you do, and you send it in by email to the regional inspector, so it's not a difficult thing to do. If you're not familiar with doing septic designs in New Hampshire, it is not that big a change if the foundation changes a little bit. So I don't need to go into too much more detail on that, but I think that kind of answers your question.
So what would the board like to do about that? Are we entertaining the request of the applicant to have it a condition of approval at the building inspector stage or as part of our review of the site plan?
I think it can become a conditional of the final approval, and then as Dennis said, they, 2 years down the pike, when they sell, you know, one of the later houses, they had to make little changes, they can just do as an as-built, and but it saves us from having changes come back to us 2 years down, and then we have to re-meet to do a site plan review because things didn't fit where they wanted, or somebody wanted a very different house, and you know that's going to be HDC is, if they're going to give final approvals, are they going to give approvals to each house design along the way? I mean,
Yes, that would have anything to do with that.
yeah, okay. So well, it does if they don't know what the houses are going up, and it's going to affect, I mean, if they're going to change locations and things, that they can't do minor changes to the site plan, then they'd have to come back here, and all of a sudden they've got a half-built project, and they're coming in for site plan amendments. So I think condition of approval would be fine, and they can make changes later and get the as-built. Yeah.
I don't know that we need a motion necessarily as much as an indication. Glenn, do we need to move? Sorry, do we need to move on that, or is it just a recommendation to the applicant about where?
What to expect,
Are we gonna
because
do
we're not voting on
requirement
conditional approval.
or entertain?
That's your decision. I mean,
But do we need a motion for that, or is it just a?
yeah, I think you should have a motion for that.
All right, I'll move that the septic design approvals become a condition for the final approval of the site plan. Okay, Dennis's recommendation here. No,
That is not his,
that's not the,
if that's the motion you want, you either don't want anyone to second Peter's, or you want it to get seconded and defeated.
the idea here is to go with what Dennis had said earlier, is that you you can do a conditional approval pending final approval of the septic systems by the town and state, and the final approval for the site, for the whole plan, would be contingent upon having approvals from the state for all 12 units. The point that would make that flexible is that we would not have to come back for site plan reviews if there were minor changes that could be handled at the health inspector / slate level for a minor as-built plan change for the septic systems. So, but I think that we do need to have a approved septic system for all the units before we can give a final approval for the site plan. So that's the motion.
We're going to be voting on a conditional approval on this plan, subject to the meets and bounds, subject to.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different conditions that are going to
Okay.
go in, so there's not, that won't be the only condition. It's
the
just
drainage.
This is just
to give him an idea
guidance to the applicants.
of when they want to start designing this.
So I just want to, at the gentle suggestion of Robin, point out what's in the subdivision regulations. And if I'm reading this correctly, the board, at its discretion, may require for each lot individual approval for wastewater disposal system construction, and the board may also require an acceptable plan indicating the location of such system. That, to me, reads like it's not a shall.
Right.
Because the shall in subdivision is that they shall have a 4,000 square foot area.
Right.
Yep.
That's the shall.
And they don't have
Doesn't
that.
have that shall.
So we're basically waiving
Yeah, and.
a requirement.
and From my perspective, and I don't even want to muddy the waters. So Glenn's gonna shut it down.
Second the motion. Move on. I second Peter's motion.
Okay, so the motion is to require the delineation on the site plan prior to conditional approval. Sorry, final, prior to final approval.
Right.
Okay. All right. Second by Ellie. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Right.
So that passed unanimously. So now back to the question of what do we do with the rest of the outstanding items and conditional use permit? And I think you had started maybe a motion in that
Well,
direction.
yeah, do we want to deal with the parking issue at all now?
I don't know that there is a.
I don't think there is, which is why, but since it's come up, we
There's no waiver
we
needed
needed,
because
We don't need it.
because they're not going to,
nothing's changing.
We leave the plan alone.
There is a parking waiver request. It's for the gymnasium parking. We don't meet the required parking.
yeah,
Oh,
that's right, there was that one, because for that kind of facility, we have a thing in our regulations, but,
It's over 200 spaces required.
yeah, but,
And there are never going to be 200 spaces there.
yeah.
Not even, nor needed.
Yeah,
I don't, do we have that waiver?
It was submitted early on.
it was, yeah, because I remember seeing it in the earliest, last 2 weeks ago.
Sorry, I'm just looking, is that something we can quickly dispose of now? Please pass that, the parking waiver.
And you could make the motion, if the desire is to grant the waiver, you could make the motion with the contingency that I will give you the proper verbiage will show up on the plan, because we always require that waivers be added to the facing page of the plan set.
Second.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, and I'll second that one.
All right, motion by Ellie, second by Peter. All those in favor? Aye. Passed unanimously.
that waiver is granted.
This is not like they wanted that.
So once again, we are back to, is there a motion to continue the conditional use?
Well, I guess we should find out when we need information provided. I think we don't really need a lot of lead time.
Yeah, I think the next meeting we should have that.
Based on information received before the meeting,
Design.
Right,
yeah.
from Jim Go.
Thank you.
And that any other changes of plans, they're going to be considered. But do we want to have a requirement? Because it's 2 weeks, we're almost there. It's like 10 days is the lead time. So that only gives them 4 days to change plans, so
Can we
make a
just
decision.
accept, can't we vote on the conditional approval plan based on all those changes?
no. You have the C
I
plan.
do appreciate that you were trying to get the conditional approval granted on this tonight, but that is not happening.
I know we got the list. Usually Robert reads that whole list on the spot.
There's only 3 things on it this time.
What are we doing, conditional use permit?
You're honestly just continuing.
Just continuing, we can deal with anything that's ready.
Accomplish what they can accomplish by the 18th. And if they can't accomplish anything other than Jim Gove's comments,
Then we're at least getting somewhere.
continue on the 18th.
And if the hydrogeologic report comes back, miracle.
Wondrous occurrence.
Yeah, okay,
They
got it.
review it and have their response by the 18th. I would, I'll
Yeah. Okay, so, Yeah.
If it's possible to give us a little more time, I'd rather take an extra week or two to make sure that we're not coming back again.
So go to the first meeting in April?
Yes.
That's absolutely your call.
I'm just being mindful that there's a number of follow-up items here, and,
it can't be done in 4 days, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Perfect.
So if that's the case, the next date would be April 1st with any amended changes due by the 20th of March.
I believe that would require an extension to,
And that would require, yeah, so we'd have to have you request that extension.
can we request that extension?
Certainly,
You absolutely can, yes.
yes.
Does that need to be done in writing? Quickly jot it down or no?
No.
Just, okay.
It's recorded.
I would like to request an extension to our site plan submissions to allow us to come back on the April 1st meeting.
Okay. Okay. We need to vote on the,
We need a motion to approve that request.
yeah, I'll move that the extension request to be granted
Until when?
until April 18th is what he said, but do we want to extend it a little further than that, or just leave it?
To April 1st at 6.
April 1st, I mean, sorry, yeah, not 18th.
Okay.
Second.
So a motion by Peter, second by Ben. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we can make a motion to continue this meeting, to this hearing to April 1st at the Town Hall at 6:45 PM.
With all
And I don't know, yeah, with any plans received, any modifications to plans received by the 20th of March.
Will be the first meeting.
Yes.
That would be the first meeting, yeah.
Second.
Motion by Peter, second by Ben. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah, this is a tough piece of property, I tell you, having worked there for a number of years, there's a lot of times the odor coming from the swamp was pretty heavy.
So we've disposed of the first 2 items under board business. The third is just for the record that we received a completed construction report from town engineer Dennis Quintal on the CJ&J site development at 83 Route 125.
Is that the ECSI?
No, CJ&J.
CJ&J is the refrigerated trailers
Oh, yeah, I got it.
next to the Blue House, yeah.
Different animal entirely.
And does anyone have any additional business that may legally come before the board?
You got the invoice, right?
No? What invoice?
Invoice from Civil Construction Management?
Oh, did we get an invoice for that? Sure did.
Yeah.
Any concerns about approving this invoice?
No? There's two of them, according to this. Major Sanborn Seminary and for the residential village at Granite Fields.